In the pre-dawn darkness of August 22nd, 1831, a Virginia slave owner named Joseph Travis had no idea that the trusted enslaved man sleeping in his barn, a preacher who could read, who whites called harmless, had spent the night praying for the strength to kill him and his entire family. By sunrise, Travis would be dead, and within 48 hours, the South would be forever changed. Welcome to Historic Crimes TV, where you get the true story of events that have happened in the past which help shape the history of the world that we are living in. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that real-life stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by liking the video. Where you're watching from, share it with someone, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Nathaniel Nat Turner was born on October 2nd, 1800, on Benjamin Turner's plantation in Southampton County, Virginia, a rural area where enslaved people outnumbered whites in some districts. His mother, Nancy, was brought from Africa, and according to later accounts, she was so horrified at her son being born into slavery that she had to be restrained from killing him as an infant, an act of mercy in her eyes. From his earliest years, Turner was recognized as exceptional. He displayed an unusual intelligence and what seemed like supernatural knowledge. Before he could read, he accurately described events that occurred before his birth, astonishing enslaved and free people alike. His grandmother, old Bridget, and his mother believed he was marked for great purpose, telling him he would never serve any master but God. Turner's first owner, Benjamin Turner, unusually allowed the boy to be taught to read and write by Benjamin's son. This was rare in the South, where literacy among enslaved people was increasingly restricted. Nat devoured the Bible and became deeply religious, spending hours in prayer and fasting. His intelligence and piety earned him the designation, the prophet, among the enslaved community. In his early 20s, Turner had a transformative religious experience. He ran away from the plantation in 1821, but shocked everyone by returning voluntarily after 30 days. He later explained that the Spirit had commanded him to return to the service of my earthly master. This act seemed to confirm whites' view of him as exceptionally pious and trustworthy, a fatal misperception. Turner began receiving visions around 1825. He saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle, blood flowing in streams, lights in the sky, and hieroglyphic characters, Christ's blood dripping on corn in the fields, the numbers revealing themselves in leaves. He interpreted these visions as divine communications, believing he was chosen for a special mission. In 1828, he had what he considered a definitive revelation. I heard a loud noise in the heavens, and the Spirit instantly appeared to me and said the serpent was loosened, and Christ had laid down the yoke he had borne for the sins of men, and that I should take it on and fight against the serpent. Turner began baptizing other enslaved people and was acknowledged as a preacher. He even baptized a white man, Ethelred T. Brantley, in a public ceremony that scandalized the white community but enhanced his reputation among both races as a genuine man of God. By 1830, through inheritances and sales, Turner had come under the ownership of Joseph Travis, who had married Turner's legal owner, Salithel Francis, widow of Turner's previous owner. Travis was considered a relatively lenient master. He allowed Turner to move about with unusual freedom and hired him out to other farms. Turner could read and preach, activities that gave him access to multiple plantations and the trust of the white community. This trust was Turner's greatest weapon. Whites saw him as old Nat, intelligent but harmless, religious and obedient. They had no idea that behind his deferential exterior, Turner was planning the largest slave rebellion in American history. Turner didn't plan alone. His core conspirators were Hart Travis, Hercules, also owned by Joseph Travis. Hart was large, strong, and completely loyal to Turner. He was one of the first recruited and would be among the last captured. Henry Porter, enslaved on a neighboring plantation, Henry was decisive and brave, essential to Turner's planning. Nelson Williams, known for his intelligence and organizational skills. Sam Francis, owned by Turner's legal owner, Sam brought knowledge of multiple plantations. These men met secretly in the woods, ostensibly for religious services, but actually to plan revolution. Turner told them of his visions and his divine mission. They discussed targets, routes, and timing. The plan evolved over months, possibly years. Turner initially planned to launch the rebellion on July 4th, 1831, Independence Day, a date heavy with irony. But he fell ill and took this as a sign to wait. Then, on August 13th, 1831, an atmospheric phenomenon occurred. The sun appeared bluish-green, likely due to particles in the atmosphere from volcanic eruption or forest fires elsewhere. This was exactly the celestial sign Turner had been awaiting. He called his core conspirators to a meeting on Sunday, August 21st, at Cabin Pond, a secluded spot in the woods. They roasted a pig, drank brandy, and finalized their plans. Two more men joined, Jack Reese and Will Francis. Will Francis deserves special mention. Owned by Nathaniel Francis, Will was known as Will the Executioner for his fierce hatred of slavery and whites. Some sources suggest Will had been viciously punished previously. He would become the rebellion's most feared and violent participant, killing with a broadaxe with such ferocity that even some fellow rebels were disturbed. The rebellion began not with inspirational speeches, but with cold-blooded murder. Turner and 6 men, Hark, Henry, Sam, Nelson, Will, and Jack approached the Travis house in darkness. They entered through an unlocked window. Turner initially attempted to kill Joseph Travis himself with a hatchet, but only wounded him. Will finished the job with his broadaxe. They then systematically killed Salaful Francis Travis, Turner's legal owner; Putnam Moore, young man apprentice; Joel Westbrook, hired hand; an infant in its cradle. Turner later justified sparing no one. Any survivor could raise the alarm and doom the rebellion before it could spread. They took guns, ammunition, and horses. Mrs. Sally Francis, who lived at Reese Place, and her young son were killed. The rebels now numbered about 9, having picked up recruits. At Giles Reese's place, and then at the plantation of Samuel Turner, no relation to Nat, more killings occurred. The rebels acquired more horses and weapons. Their force was growing, approximately 15 mounted and armed men by sunrise. Mrs. Catherine Whitehead's farm. This attack was particularly brutal. Catherine Whitehead, her son Richard for daughters, a granddaughter, and the overseer were all killed. 18-year-old Margaret Whitehead tried to escape, fleeing into the woods. Turner himself pursued and killed her with a fence rail and then a sword, the only person he personally killed during the entire rebellion. He later explained he felt compelled to kill at least one person with his own hands to maintain credibility with his followers. Richard Porter's place. The family was killed, and the rebels seized more weapons. Nathaniel Francis Plantation, Will's owner. Mrs. Francis and several children were killed, though Nathaniel Francis himself was away. The overseers and other whites were hunted down. By Monday midday, August 22nd, Turner's army had swelled to approximately 40 to 60 men, though numbers are disputed. They had 15 to 20 horses, several muskets and rifles, swords and sabers, axes, hatchets, and farm implements. Growing confidence. They had killed roughly 51 white people in less than 12 hours. At the Levi Waller farm, the pattern of easy success broke. A slave at Waller's warned the family. Though most were killed, Waller's wife and 10 children, including infants, while some escaped and raised the alarm. By now, word was spreading across Southampton County. Turner divided his forces, a tactical error. He sent a group to attack another plantation while he remained with the main force at James Parker's farm. When 18 armed white militiamen appeared unexpectedly, Turner's poorly trained rebels scattered in confusion. The element of surprise was gone. Turner tried to regroup at the Harris plantation, but found his force had dwindled to around 20 men. Many recruits, seeing organized resistance, melted away into the woods or returned to their plantations. Turner made a final attempt to rally at the Ridley plantation, hoping to recruit more followers and march on Jerusalem. Instead, He found most enslaved people too frightened to join. When another militia force appeared, the remaining rebels fled. Some fought briefly, most ran. By Tuesday afternoon, the military phase of the rebellion was over. It had lasted approximately 40 hours. The scale of white retaliation far exceeded the rebellion's violence. As news spread across Virginia and into North Carolina, armed white men poured into Southampton County. They came not just as militia, but as vigilantes, and they were indiscriminate in their violence. Estimates suggest 100 to 200 black people were killed in the week following the rebellion, most completely innocent of any involvement. The violence included beheadings. Enslaved people were decapitated, and their heads were mounted on poles along roads leading into Jerusalem as warnings. One intersection became known as Blackhead Signpost. Lynchings, mass hangings without trial occurred across the county. Torture. Some captured rebels were tortured before execution to extract confessions and names of other conspirators. Mutilation. Bodies were desecrated. Ears were cut off as trophies. The violence was so extreme that some whites protested. General Epps, commander of the militia, issued orders to stop the indiscriminate killing. A newspaper editor wrote, "We do not object to any proper restraint upon this class of our population, but we do protest against proceeding at once to pass sentence and execute it upon every Negro that may come along." Eventually, legal proceedings replaced mob violence. Virginia authorities tried 55 enslaved people for involvement in the rebellion. Of these, 18 were hanged, 12 were transported, sold out of state. 25 were acquitted or discharged. The trials were surprisingly fair by the standards of the time, with some defendants receiving adequate legal representation. Many were acquitted due to lack of evidence. While his followers were being captured, tried, and executed, Nat Turner had vanished. He had slipped away during the chaos at Dr. Simon Blunt's plantation on August 23rd and returned to the area near the Travis farm, hiding literally under the noses of his pursuers. Turner's hideout was ingenious. He dug a cave beneath a pile of fence rails in the woods, camouflaging the entrance with brush. From this position, he could observe search parties passing within yards. He survived on vegetables stolen from nearby fields at night and water from a nearby spring. The reward for his capture grew to $500, a substantial sum. Thousands of men searched the woods, swamps, and slave quarters. Dogs were brought in. Suspected hideouts were burned. Yet Turner remained free. On October 30th, 1831, a farmer named Benjamin Phipps was hunting in the woods when he spotted Turner emerging from his hiding place, armed with a small sword. Accounts differ on exactly what happened. Some say Turner was cornered, others that he was simply too weak from hunger to resist. Phipps held him at gunpoint and brought him to Jerusalem. Turner's capture set off celebrations among whites and profound anxiety among blacks who feared renewed violence. But Turner himself appeared calm, almost relieved that his ordeal of hiding was over. Between November 1st and 3rd, Thomas Ruffin Gray, a local lawyer, interviewed Turner in his jail cell. Gray published the resulting document as The Confessions of Nat Turner on November 5th, just 6 days before Turner's execution. It sold thousands of copies. Turner explained his visions in detail, described the planning and execution of the rebellion, and provided names and roles of participants. Significantly, he showed no remorse, stating, "I am here loaded with chains and willing to suffer the fate that awaits me." He denied being motivated by personal mistreatment. "I had no cause to complain of my treatment." He insisted the rebellion was divinely ordained. "The spirit that spoke to the prophets in former days spoke to me." When asked if he regretted the rebellion, he replied he had acted according to his duty as God's instrument. On November 11th, 1831, Nat Turner was hanged in Jerusalem, Virginia, before a large crowd. Reports indicate he showed no fear and made no final statement. His body was handed over to doctors for dissection, a common practice for executed criminals, but also a final degradation. What happened next reveals the depths of white rage and fear. Turner's body was flayed, skinned, His skeleton was boiled down and allegedly given to a doctor. His skin was rendered into grease and made into purses and other items that were kept as souvenirs. His skull became a grotesque trophy passed between individuals. As late as 1968, a skull purported to be Turner's was still in possession of a Virginia doctor's family. In 2016, descendants of Turner began seeking the skull's return for proper burial. Though DNA testing has been inconclusive, the rebellion forced Virginia's legislature into an unprecedented debate over slavery's future. In January 1832, the Virginia House of Delegates engaged in 2 weeks of open discussion about abolishing slavery, the most serious such debate in any Southern state. Thomas Jefferson Randolph, Jefferson's grandson, proposed gradual emancipation, arguing slavery made Virginia vulnerable to future rebellions. Some delegates noted slavery hindered economic development. Others argued slavery was morally indefensible. Economic catastrophe would result. Free black people would be dangerous. Property rights were sacred. Slavery was ordained by God and nature. The emancipation proposals failed narrowly. The closest vote was 73 to 58 against even considering gradual emancipation. This marked the last time a Southern legislature would seriously debate ending slavery. Afterward, defense of slavery hardened into aggressive ideology. Having rejected emancipation, Virginia instead tightened control. New laws enacted in 1832 included teaching enslaved people to read or write became illegal, punishable by fine or whipping. Free black people were also prohibited from organizing schools. Violators faced up to 6 months in jail. Black preachers were banned from preaching. Enslaved people could not attend religious meetings unless whites were present. Nighttime religious services were prohibited. Enslaved people needed written passes to travel. Groups of more than 5 enslaved people meeting without white supervision were illegal. Free black people faced new restrictions on movement. New laws made it nearly impossible to free enslaved people. Free black people were pressured to leave Virginia. Those remaining faced escalating restrictions. These Virginia laws became models for similar codes across the South, creating the most repressive period for enslaved people before the Civil War. How many people actually participated in the rebellion? How many were killed? The numbers remain uncertain. White deaths. Contemporary accounts range from 55 to 65, including Joseph Travis family, 5, Sally Francis, 2, Catherine Whitehead family, 7, Levi Waller family, 11, many individual victims across multiple farms. Rebel participants. Estimates range from 60 to 80 total, though never more than 50 to 60 at one time. Many joined briefly and deserted. Black deaths in retaliation. Contemporary estimates of 100 to 200 killed. Some historians suggest the number may have reached 300. Executed after trial. 18 enslaved people hanged plus several free black people. Southampton County was devastated economically and psychologically. Property values plummeted as whites feared living in a black-majority county. Some plantations were abandoned. Enslaved people lived under constant surveillance and suspicion. White families slept with loaded guns for years afterward. The rebellion was not discussed openly. It became a traumatic silence. Descendants of both victims and rebels still live in Southampton County, now about 50% black, 40% white. The wounds remained so raw that serious historical examination didn't begin until the 1960s. The Nat Turner Rebellion is perhaps American history's most paradoxical event. It was morally justified resistance to evil, yet involved killing innocent children. It sought to free enslaved people, but led to greater repression. It was a military failure, but a political earthquake that accelerated the path to civil war. Turner is simultaneously a hero, prophet, terrorist, madman, and freedom fighter. What we can say with certainty is this. Nat Turner looked at slavery, a system of total domination built on violence, rape, family separation, and the theft of human lives, and concluded that violent resistance was not only justified but divinely commanded. He acted with complete conviction and paid with his life. Whether that makes him a martyr or a murderer depends on how you weigh the morality of revolutionary violence against oppression versus the sanctity of innocent life. For Southampton County's enslaved population, who lived under even harsher conditions after the rebellion, Turner's legacy was profoundly ambiguous. For abolitionists, he was evidence of slavery's fundamental evil. For defenders of slavery, he was justification for brutal control. For America, Nat Turner revealed a truth the nation tried to ignore, that slavery and democracy could not coexist indefinitely, that the contradiction would eventually produce violence, and that the bill for 2 centuries of bondage would ultimately be paid in blood, whether through rebellion or civil war. In the end, Turner's prophecy came true, though not as he imagined. 30 years after his execution, the nation did tear itself apart over slavery. 600,000 Americans died in a war that finally accomplished what Turner's rebellion could not: the end of slavery. The preacher who saw visions in a Virginia barn had, in his way, glimpsed the future, a future written in blood and fire, where freedom came not from God's direct intervention, but from human struggle, suffering, and sacrifice on an unimaginable scale.